Okay. Hi, everybody. Mike Shea here, writer and co-creator of Miskatonic High. I'm here with Ryan Mendoza, artist and co-creator of Miskatonic High. We're here to talk about the season 2, especially the epilogue story, Hard Truth. And we're going to talk about some other season 2 stuff. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great.
Good to hear it. What time is it there? It's nice and early.
Yeah, I'm just having my second coffee of the day.
It is late here. I am having a little caffeine myself. Um, so why don't we jump in? So one of the things that we always do is for our season collections, we add a short story at the end. It's kind of a nice little bonus, something that we can put into the collections. It really gives us a chance to sort of try different things, which I know I like doing, and I hope you do too. And for this one, we are exploring the world of the school newspaper with our high school reporter, Ricky, or actually he prefers Richard Meeks. So why don't we just jump on into this? So we start off with him getting ready to go on a date with Alex. He had asked Alex to go out on a date in issue 12. She didn't really want to go, but sort of got pressured into saying yes. And Sarah is all excited for her to go on a date. And so she's going on this date with Ricky.
Yeah.
Ricky, it turns out, lives at Miskatonic High. I don't think we knew before we wrote this that this was that some kids were boarding here. But it
Although I
makes you,
did put it in the design.
yeah, I think you did, and I think it makes a lot of sense for why the school is so big
Yeah,
for
I
our
just
small number of students.
I think we just didn't mention it initially,
Mhm.
so it's just one of those things that we can expand on.
Right. Right. And I think you're right, because I remember when we were first doing this, you came up with some nice schematics of what the school was, what's
Yeah,
on the different levels and things like that. And we actually included them, maybe issue 1, maybe issue 2. I
yeah,
can't
first
remember.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we put them in the back. And so if people want to go back and look, you can definitely check it out. But um, so some people live on campus, some people don't. Most of our kids are commuting kids,
Mhm.
but Ricky lives there. um and we get Ricky's room, which is a complete and utter mess. I Let's talk a little bit, because it's going to pop up every now and again. The sigil is clearly a superhero that he loves, and it's one that you came up with. So why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, I've been I've been thinking about this detective kind of superhero, a pulp action superhero.
Hmm.
Uh, it's been through a lot of iterations in the past.
Hmm.
I believe I did a few short stories involving him, but he wasn't called the Sigil at the time,
Hmm.
which is something I doodled around. And then when this story came up,
Hmm.
you told me that Richard was like a comic book geek,
Hmm.
and thought, I really couldn't think of a nice character to put in those to convey how much he loves a certain character. I
Hmm.
mean, I wanted him to have one single comic book series that he'd be um, obsessed about. And
Hmm.
what better than a detective pulp hero, right?
Right. Well, and also
And
the supernatural side of it, because
yeah.
yeah.
Because I didn't want to put a Marvel hero or a DC
Right.
hero. So I thought maybe I should put a original character, just
Hmm.
something on the side that maybe nobody will notice anyway. Something that looks a bit similar to existing heroes,
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
like that.
Right.
And kind of worked out.
Hmm.
Although I don't think those underwear will fit him.
No, probably not. But maybe it's a collector's item, and it's just
Yeah,
he's got it scattered around.
limited edition.
It's like underoos. Yeah, we had done this before because we were doing it. I want to say back when we were doing issue 5 with Alex, and how Alex is very much into pop culture, and especially geeky pop culture. And you wisely said, let's stay away from Marvel or DC or any of the big sort of comic books. And we sort of settled on the Studio Ghibli instead. And I always thought that was smart, because it really does keep us away from the big two and really commenting on comics at all, which we really don't need to do. But so Ricky is getting ready for this date, and he's in this dorm, and it's clear that he's getting picked on in the dorm. They're making fun of him for going out on his date and getting all dressed up. And one of the things that had occurred to me when we were introducing Ricky as a character was wanted him to be kind of a humorous figure early on, someone that we would kind of laugh at, that here's this kid who's self-important going after Simon and for election fraud and all of this stuff. And he demands to be called Richard, and really sort of treat him lightly. But once we get to his own story, we find out that there's some more things going on there.
Yeah.
And one of it is that he's sort of picked on, and he really had a hard time finding his place in school.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened in this story is we sort of bounce around in time, and it's always a little nerve-wracking when we do bounce around in time, because you want to make sure that the audience is sort of following it. And one of the things that you did really nicely was the color tones of the modern, the present versus the past. Of on this first page, we see him with the psychiatrist, and we see him with Ren, and you can tell by the coloring of it that it is in the past.
Yeah.
And I liked, one of the things that I liked about this story was we sort of went back to the beginning and saw it through Ricky's eyes. And so his experience of meeting Ren is different than our experience of meeting Ren, and his experience of meeting Alex is different than our experience of meeting Alex. And he sort of has this whole life that's been going on completely independent of what we've been showing.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I really liked about this short story, is that we see the potential of Miskatonic High from the eye of other people's perspective, like other characters. So yeah, I think it would be nice to go to the other people's perspective in future issues.
I do too.
Even the professors.
Yeah, well, and we do have some interesting professors, don't we? One of the things that I liked about this was the idea that Ren would be a character who probably has her fingers in a lot of the different parts of school, and that she probably got on the school newspaper thinking that it would be a chance to do, get herself out there, to get, some media experience, doing that. And she would quickly realize that that's not what she wants to do. And so would turn it over to Ricky the moment he showed up.
Yeah.
But the thing I liked about that was it sort of created this relationship between her and Ricky, that, she's sort of friends with him. She's sort of friends with most of the kids there, and has a relationship with them, and can certainly talk with almost anybody. So
yeah, I mean, even the way she appears in this issue, she's very different from the Ren that we know now. She doesn't usually wear her coat.
Right.
So her persona during this time as I don't know, maybe she was an editor at this time, right? So she's very different.
Right. And it also sort of, I'm pretty sure this is at least 1 year before,
I'm guessing the same.
the start of our series. So she may have been like a year younger or 2 years younger. She may have been a freshman at this time. She may have, really not come into herself just yet.
Yeah, or it could be the very beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
school year, maybe, or the very end of the school year, something
Right.
like that.
Right. It's definitely in the past at some point, and it's before the beginning of our comic. Depending how far back you want to say it is, I think both of us will probably agree with.
Mhm.
So he's talking to himself about his experience, about him at the school, and about where he feels comfortable. And the place that he feels the most comfortable is working on the school newspaper, because he is one of those characters who is uncomfortable in his personal life, but is on his game when he's in his professional life, and he's decided his professional life is to be this reporter.
Yeah.
So we send him on the date, and when he goes to meet Alex, Alex is reading his newspaper and immediately asks him about the cover story, which is about these grave robberies.
Mhm.
And I love this sequence of him with the detectives, and he's already crossed the police line. He's taking pictures of, the torn open caskets, and he's defending, student newspapers everywhere for freedom of the press. And the report and the police are like, what is going on here? Get out of here.
What are you doing here?
Yeah. So two things here. We have talked before about our shared reference for the X-Files and how
Mhm.
we both like the X-Files. We've sort of used the format of the X-Files for what we do. And we had talked at one point about our version of the lone gunman, who in the X-Files are these crazy guys who believe all the conspiracies and sort of do this was it a website, or was it, I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was a website.
Yeah, I think so. So they do this on website, and it's all about conspiracy theories, and the episodes would follow them exploring these conspiracy theories. And one of the nice things about doing this story was we really got to do that with Ricky, that he got
Mhm.
to explore all these sort of side mysteries about these little things that are going on in this very strange town.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how you decided to draw this grave robbery scene? Because you can't do Lovecraft without a grave robbery scene. So I'm curious, what inspired you to do this? Was there certain references you picked up or anything like that?
Well, um, I love Mignola, or I don't
Yeah.
know how to. I don't really know how you pronounce his name. It's
Yeah,
Mignola,
I think that's it. Yeah.
something like that. So
Mhm.
I I immediately thought about his design. Usually graveyards have
Mhm.
crosses,
Mhm.
angels,
Mhm.
dead trees, or trees without leaves.
Mhm.
So that was the inspiration for the graveyard. And usually we don't really see these kinds of settings.
Mhm.
So as an artist, you get to a point that, you know what, I've drawn everything, and then you just alter it a bit here and
Mhm.
there. But I think this was the first time that I drew a cemetery scene.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
so this was really fun to do, actually.
right. Well, we'll get used to it because we're gonna be exploring it more.
I know.
So that's one of the other things that I don't I like to do in these little stories, and I hope you like it too. Is it sort of gives us a chance to not only reflect on what we just did, but also sort of start laying the seeds for where we're going. And so, Ricky exploring these mysteries, these are mysteries that we're gonna take up sooner or later. And so it's nice to sort of plant the seeds for him and get the readers to start thinking about, oh, wait a minute, there's a spate of grave robbery going on in Miskatonic. I wonder what's going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And astute readers will probably read future issues and then think, you know what? I think I've seen this before. Is
Yeah.
this possibly the news from that short story? Something like that. So I
Right.
think the short stories really serve as a jumping point for some future stories.
Right.
And that's
Right. I think so too. I still get people who write us every now and again about the one from the first season where we did Anton and Isis, hunting at night. And that one comes up every now and again. So I think the readers like them. I certainly hope so. I certainly like doing them. One of the nice effects, and I sort of threw this at you, and you really ran with it, was the idea that these little sort of almost side stories end in the little newspaper articles that Ricky wrote. And you can sort of see how he wrote those stories based upon just the three little panels that we just read. He quoted the newspaper officer as, no comment. You can see how in his mind he's sort of putting this story together. And so I really love these little newspaper things. And we have talked about it that, the Miskatonic High is almost like a little city unto itself. It's got its own politicians. Now it has its own, newspaper reporters. It's got its own sort of, not necessarily police or officer, but kind of
its own burger joint.
Yeah, it's even got its own burger joint. So it's fun that the kids sort of don't have any adults who can help them. They're really sort of in this on their own, and Ricky is part of that. Yeah. So we get more of this date. So they sit down, they start talking, and now we get the scene where Ricky first sees Alex and is just head over heels smitten with her. And goes up and actually approaches her, tries to talk to her, tries to hit on her. And as he's gotten out this full thing, she pulls out the earbuds and wasn't listening to him the whole entire time. Which, having approached maybe one or two girls in high school, that is about as painful as I can think of. And then, of course, she's pulled away by Matt to go to the community service club for the first day of our comic. Was it weird thinking about going back to that for this scene, about going back to the very beginning?
Not really, because when was this? The second issue?
I think this would have been the first issue. So this was just before they were going to go to the community service club and meet Mr. Waleed for the first time. Like, she doesn't even know where Mr. Waleed's classroom is.
Was it? Because I remember the first scene of the first issue was they were already in the community service. So
right. So this is just before that. This is just as they're about to go there at the end of school or whatever.
Yeah. So it just referenced the previous issue and made sure that the bags and the people around were completely the same. Yeah. It's fun. I mean, going back to a point of time in the book really tells you that you're exploring the whole school at this time, the whole history of the school. So it's not like a point in time. It has a whole history of its own by now, and that's great. I
Right.
mean, usually we walk around and we don't even notice the people around us.
Right.
This is a great example of how other people might view a certain scene differently
Hmm.
from what we did. I
Right.
mean, we might be having fun that day, and then we don't notice that for another person, it's a totally different experience.
Right. Right. And that happens a lot where, I think that that happens a lot where people think that they're having the same experience that everybody's having, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's not. And sometimes, you're having the best day, and that for that person, it's the worst day in the world, and
precisely.
you didn't even notice.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's fun. We are in the process of pre-ordering issue 1 for the direct market. And so I've
yeah.
been
I
looking.
can't believe
I
that's
know.
coming up pretty soon now.
Yeah,
I mean,
March.
it's already wow,
Yeah.
almost 2 months into the year. What's going
Hmm.
on?
Yeah, it's going fast.
Did
But to
somebody push the fast forward or something?
that's basically been my life for the last 10 years. It's just zzz.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird.
But to go back and look at that first issue again, like I've been looking at it a lot because I've been doing pieces of it for social media, and
Hmm.
it's so interesting the way the characters have evolved from them, both in terms of who they are as characters, but also in your design of them. Like
Hmm.
slight things change, like Alex's, ponytails
Yeah,
are
yeah,
a little bit different now, and Ren is a little bit thinner now, and it's funny to go back and look at those and remember. I was struggling with what the kids were supposed to say back then.
yeah.
Yeah,
But now you've got it to a
yeah.
science.
Well, yeah, yeah. You just have Ren cut somebody down, and you're all set. Um. Okay, so Ricky has fallen head over heels in love with Alex, is the school newspaper editor, and is in the modern stories on the state. And so now we go to the second story from the newspaper, which is about the rat things at Sarah's orchard. And you know, it's with Alex, her best friend is Sarah. So if you say anything bad about Sarah or her family or her orchard, you're already on rough ground with her. Um,
Yeah,
but so I like the idea of seeing the rat things from a different perspective of like, what does the neighborhood think? What does the town think about these rat things? And I like that the kid is just like, oh yeah, there's these big rat things around, don't you know?
hmm,
And like that pets would be missing, the cats would be missing, the dogs would be missing, probably been eaten by these rat things. And um that he would of course latch onto this as a story that he would want to cover.
yeah.
So I again, was it weird coming back to the orchard now? When we did the orchard in issue 2, it was fall. they
Yeah,
were
yeah,
they were collecting the apples, and now it's winter. It's dark. It's
yeah.
the trees all are completely barren, and the place is kind of boarded up, for the winter. And I'm wondering, like, how do you approach that to show the change in season?
Okay. Let me just say that um, although I love the scenes, the
Hmm.
winter scenes,
Hmm.
I really enjoy drawing the diner scene. Not drawing food.
Okay, noted.
And another thing,
Hmm.
I've never seen snow in real life.
You've never seen snow?
No,
Oh
never
wow,
snows.
there we go.
So my reference for places like this has always been television and movies.
Hmm.
But I don't usually see those scenes for every scene that we need. Like for
Hmm.
a farm, I've never seen a farm during winter,
Yeah,
or it's very rare that the scene that I have in mind I've seen in other movies, it doesn't usually happen like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of guessing
Mm-hmm.
from me. So hopefully it matches
Mm-hmm.
what it is in real life. Although I look at internet photos for reference,
Mm-hmm.
they're just for inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And most of what you see on the final page has been laid out during the thumbnail part of my uh, drawing sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just look at the photo references to
Mm-hmm.
add more detail to it.
Right.
So hopefully it's got the look that it's supposed to be.
It does, as someone who's lived in snow for many, many years, I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you it certainly feels real. I mean, that's basically if you want to know what New England is like in winter, it's gray,
Mm-hmm.
dark, and dirty snow. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty much it. And you pretty much nailed it here. Um, you and I were talking about this. It's funny because Lovecraft lived in New England, and he wrote all these stories basically about New England.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the winter very rarely comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely does he talk about a snow or a blizzard or anything like this. It's always, it's always dry and, misty at the most. So, it's something that when we started putting this together and figuring out the timeline of it, and how we're moving kind of slowly, but we're still moving forward, you know, since the first season was in fall, we're sort of moving through winter, and it
Mm-hmm.
would be dark and cold and snowy and all of these things. So I had no idea that you had never seen snow before. You're doing a great job on it.
Yeah, and commenting about the rat story,
Mm-hmm.
um, you will notice that Ricky is very obsessed with the supernatural stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe some people are asking, why don't other people notice this stuff if it's
Mm-hmm.
happening this rampant?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's that rampant.
Right.
It reminds me of this story wherein people who are into certain things are very well informed in those things,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are just working, studying, don't really notice this stuff because they're busy with other things.
Right.
And because Ricky is very obsessed with strange and weird stuff that's going in the city, he tends to find out these stories more than normal people do.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the rest of the population, it's probably just, you read it in the newspaper and think, it's another Tatler
Mm-hmm.
conspiracy theory or something like that.
Right.
And that's what I love about this character is that
Mm-hmm.
he's bringing us to another world wherein, yeah, this could be a possibility. There
Mm-hmm.
are strange things going on around us.
Right. And even in this one where we have, his source here is the little kid. It's like if a
Mhm.
little kid came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, there's giant rat things, living over on the farm next door." I'm not
Mhm.
going to believe him. I'm a rational human adult. But Ricky, he's like, "Yes, there are rat things living next door." It's like you're saying, it's, some people are more attuned to that, and
Yeah.
some people will find rational explanations for why it couldn't possibly be those supernatural things.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I got to tell you, and I think we talked about this before. I love this format of him just exploring these just weird, odd things, and
Yeah.
I think it's something that we should definitely think about doing more in the future, because this is a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we have a few ideas, don't we?
I think we do too. Okay. So we're back on the date. It's not going well with him and Alex, but they're still talking. He's chomping down on the burger. She's eating the French fry. You can tell that You like drawing food. Um, and we cut to the school cafeteria where Alex is talking to Ren and Simon about the events in issue 5, where she's dealing with the cult of the Red Rose and how they attacked the library and all of this. And Simon is talking about his presidential campaign, and there's the bell, and so Alex and Simon leave, and it turns out that sitting right behind them was Ricky, listening in the whole time.
Yeah.
And here we are back with him and Ren, and again, it's nice that Ren can be that person who's just like, she knows everybody in school. There's nobody that she doesn't know. And she's talking to Ricky, and Ricky is saying, now that he knows that Alex likes this weird, esoteric, supernatural stuff, he's got this whole school newspaper to himself that he can do whatever he wants with. So now he's just gonna skew it that way, kind of as a love letter to Alex, and of course Ren is making fun of him the whole time as he's talking about it. School
because
cafeterias. So here we are. We're going from the diner to the school cafeteria. My son, whenever he looks at my book, he always wants to see if there's things that are similar to his school, and school cafeterias seem to come up an awful lot. So was it a challenge, drawing a school cafeteria, or are there lots of references out there?
Well, for this particular one, I laid it out so that I don't have to draw tons of people. So the big panel, I made sure to capture the cafeteria scene with that one, so that I can just focus on the characters for the rest of the scene, for the rest of the page. Yeah, I think just seeing kids eating is enough to convey the idea that this is the busy lunch hour or something like that. So hopefully it comes through clearly.
Yeah, it really did. And that's interesting you say that, because I was just reading another comic artist was talking about that, how on a lot of his pages he has this sort of one panel that's going to be the big sort of establishing shot, if you will, that sort of has to show a lot of detail, and then after that he can go in close up on the characters or things like that. So I'm wondering, is that sort of a standard thing that you sort of have to do in comics, or like when you're laying out a page, is that something you think about, or is it different page to page?
It depends on the script, actually. When you're laying out a page, you have to think about changing the angles, making sure that all the characters can fit, showing the thing that they're supposed to be looking at. If they're looking at a book or something, it has to be pointing downwards. If it's looking up, it has to be worm's eye view. And then you also have to make sure that the dialogue will fit. So you can put
that's always a challenge.
Tons of detail in the background, but if it's going to be covered up by dialogue, it's not going to be good. So you have to find a good middle ground to lay it out. It's not like Marvel books where in every single panel it's face. The face of the character, and then there's no place to put the dialogue in, because the dialogue is simply or or crap or something like that. I mean, they write the dialogue after the drawings are done.
I've done that maybe once or twice where I write the dialogue after that, and maybe it's just me and I'm an idiot, but I find that a lot harder than doing it beforehand.
Well, you did a good job with the last one.
Well, I had your help on that, so
no, but coming up with a story like that, it's pretty impressive,
right? But the thing about comics is always it's the collaboration that if a comic works, it's because the artist and the writer are working in the same headspace. You know, when the writer and the artist aren't working in the same headspace, it never works. So you know, it's impossible to say that it's any good without both. I think anyway. Now that's an interesting thing that you bring up, and again, this is almost more for my curiosity than not. So like on this page, we have, you know, our big sort of establishing shot of the cafeteria with lots of people. Then we get in closer on Simon, Alex, and Ren, and then they leave, and we see a little bit of them. And then this last panel, you really just focus on the two character, and we don't worry about the background because you knew there was going to be a lot of dialogue there. So like, is that in your thumbnail stage, you're already thinking that, okay, there's going to be a lot of dialogue here, I'm gonna have to fill it up? Is it at the penciling stage? Like, at what point do you decide, okay, I need to fill up background here, or I need to leave more space?
Yeah. Definitely the dialogue plays a big role in it. And also because you're talking about the last panel, right?
Yep.
Since this is really extreme close-up on the characters, it's the effect of a camera lens wherein the background is blurred if you're really using a nice lens. So it's essentially like that. The background becomes non-essential, and you're just focusing on the two characters right now that are talking. And the dialogue is more important. That's what the panel is telling you. The dialogue is more important. Their emotion, the way they interact with each other is more important than what the background will tell you, because we already told you where we are, what's going on.
Right.
And then the final one, it's more on information about something else.
Right.
It doesn't really have anything to do with where they are.
Right. And in the reader's mind, they're already in the cafeteria with him.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, once you have the reader in the location, their imagination is going to supply a lot of it. Yeah. I gotta say, I really like that last panel, the way that you have their expressions. You know, with Ricky sort of having this dreamy expression, you know, he's sort of clearly off in his own little world. And Ren is sort of giving him the side eye, like, you're not okay, are you?
Because she knows. I mean, I think Ren is probably Ricky's oldest friend in the school.
Yeah. Right.
And she knows how the paper works. So she already knows how Ricky's mind is going and where he's taking the newspaper. So I don't think she appreciates what he's planning, but she doesn't really care.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Ren is, you know, if it doesn't affect her, she's just like, okay.
Yeah, but like, dude, have yourself checked.
Oh man, yeah. The evolution of Ren as she's become this character has just been wonderful, because I remember when we would send out the first couple of issues and people had already pegged her as the mean girl, and that she was going to be there to pick on the other girl, and, you know, to steal Matt from Sarah and all these other things. And once we sort of turned that corner and sort of established Ren for who she is, she really became just a wonderful character to have in this story. You know, the one who can basically tell you you're crazy.
With most characters, actually, and we'll see it in this one with Ricky as well. I mean, like you said before, we set him up as like a funny guy, and then we will find out later that he's more of a tragic guy, actually.
Right. And matter of fact, let's go ahead and jump to that, because the next page, Alex is asking Ricky about his family, and this sort of triggers this flashback about how he ended up coming to the school and living at the school. And one of the the things that I do when I'm trying to come up with a story, and we talk about it, is like, what's the central idea here? And the central idea is that truth is really, really important to Ricky. And if truth is really, really important to Ricky, obviously someone in his past didn't believe him, just lied and got away with it or something like that. That truth and lie would have to be at the heart of his story. And so we get this story of him probably maybe in middle school, somewhere around there, and he catches his dad cheating on his mom, calls him on it, and when the mom comes down, she believes the dad rather than Ricky. And not just believes the dad rather than Ricky, but actually sends him to a psychologist because they believe he makes up these stories, that he's someone who cannot be believed and that he's a pathological liar. And so right there we get the truth of this whole story about what's going on, about why he saw this psychologist that he's been talking about this whole time, about why the truth is so important to him, and why he would latch on to this idea of truth that nobody else can see. So let's talk about this sort of home drama that we have here of him and his mom and his dad. I really just threw it at you and just said, it's a younger Ricky. We can tell he's younger because he's wearing the Sigil t-shirt. And he well, and we talked about this, that in his flashbacks, like when he was younger, we would see him in that t-shirt. And so it sort of became his uniform. So like, how do you approach that with the mom and the dad here, where I really didn't give you much. I just said, his mom is asleep, his dad comes home from work, maybe he's been drinking or something, and just sort of threw it at you. So like, how do you approach it?
Well, I don't really have a clear idea of how characters will look like initially. Usually I just base it upon what for parents, usually I get ideas from the character itself, like the color of the hair. I gave it to the mom. Then for the dad, I wanted him to look very different from Ricky, so that there's a opposite to them, like not really getting along. It just gives you an idea that Ricky is very different from his dad, and that's why they clash a lot. So it's just a visual cue that it doesn't mean that they're not related or anything. It just I want the dad to look very, confident about himself, and Ricky like very, very, very different, very unkept. With a nice way to put it. And I wanted the dad to look professional, like he's really means business. And Ricky is someone who doesn't seem to understand. Is it just Ricky having these things in his imagination, or is it really happening? You have to give the readers their own ideas about the story. Give them doubt. Give them a way to think about the story in another way.
Right.
That's how I approach this page.
Well, it certainly works. I think we get at the central conflict within Ricky about, that truth has become something that's really, really important to him because people haven't believed him in the past. So this is my advice for people who are going out on dates. Maybe don't bring up your traumatic family experiences on your first date.
All right.
Because we immediately jump back to the diner and Alex has this look like, yeah, that sounds terrible. But fortunately for Alex, along comes her savior in Simon, calling her up and saying, oh, there's an emergency, you need to come quick. She's like, it was great to do this, Ricky. I'm not sure that it's going to work, but we should definitely be friends and let's talk more, and I gotta go. And so she goes out.
Realize how long that story took. Alex plate and her son shake.
Yeah, it's all gone. It's now darker outside. That was a long story to tell.
Yep.
And so Simon has saved her from this horrible date. Simon and Alex are friends. Probably Alex and Sarah are Simon's only friends. And so it's nice that he would save her. But Ricky sees this, and if he already didn't like Simon, now he hates Simon. I'm sure in Ricky's head there's this question about, like, does she like Simon more than she likes him? This, even Ren had thought that back in whatever issue 6, that she thought Simon liked Alex. Because they're both kind of geeky, smart nerds, and so they hang out a lot. And she was happy to run his presidential campaign, and that I think a lot of people just sort of assume that they have some feelings for each other. And Ricky, of course, jumps on this, and he is now ticked off. Which comes to our conclusion and our last story from the school newspaper, which is he goes and he talks to the fridge, who I love it whenever we get the fridge in there, and sort of is asking to see the election results from Simon's election, and explaining that the fridge is like, can't we do this tomorrow? And Ricky's like, no, we have to do it now. Don't you understand how important it is that we hold people with power accountable for what they've done?
Yeah.
Right. And he's not really talking about Simon there. And so they count up the votes. There's 121 votes, which are the exact number of students at the school. But then he asked the fridge, hey, can I see an attendance list for that day? And it turns out there were a couple of kids who weren't at school that day. So how could they have possibly voted?
Yep.
And so Ricky runs the article about these election questions and how he's going to continue to find the truth, and he will bring it to his readership. Yep. So a fun little story. It's not long. It's what, 9 pages long? So
I think so. Yeah, 9 pages.
Yeah. One of the nice thing that it sort of allows us to do is, in most issues, we try to touch on every character, all 6 of the main characters, about sort of where they are, what their stories are, even if it's just a panel here or a panel there, just to keep moving their story on a little. But these short stories, we really can focus on one character and not worry too much about that.
Yeah, but we were still able to show at least most of them. Sarah, I don't think we showed Sarah, but we did show her farm.
Right. So yeah, I mean, she's there in spirit. I don't think we got Anton in, but Anton's hard to get in.
He's there. He's a spirit.
Right. And I am sure that at some point Ricky's going to investigate spirits too. So
He probably will.
So I think it's a fun little story. It's going to point to some storylines that we've already been talking about for these upcoming issues, and more will be coming up as we do it. Ricky will be a character that we'll continue to see. So I think it works. I hope people enjoy it. It's nice. I'm one of those people. I tend to buy trades. I tend to buy hardcovers. So I tend to like all the extras that are in there, and getting a little bonus story is something that I really, really like. So yeah, so it makes the collection feel a little bit even more complete to me. Speaking of the collections, I've placed the orders. They are being printed as we speak. So If you don't mind, why don't we talk about the covers, because that's the other major work that we did for the collection.
Right.
Was we did 2 new covers, one for the trade paperback, which has the kids sort of running away from school as the tentacles come out, and then the second one, which is our Goonies homage to them over the pit in the Dreamland. So why don't we talk about the trade paperback one first?
Okay.
Really, covers are your ball game. You come up with the concepts, you say, this is what I'd like to explore, this is, or here's a couple of ideas, what do you think? And it's really, it's a lot of fun for me to see what you come up with. So why don't you talk about how you came up with the trade paperback one and what you were trying to do there?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, for trades, I like it. I like to show all the characters,
Mm-hmm.
the scene, and if possible, for this second trade paperback, I wanted to show the school
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think we were able to do that with the first one,
Mm-hmm.
and it is titled Miskatonic High. So
Right.
I think initially I wanted it to have them appear somewhere else, but since we weren't able to do that in the
Mm-hmm.
first trade paperback, I wanted the school to be a showcase for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tentacles,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the people will think the Golgoroth didn't appear in the second season. No, he didn't. But
Yep.
this is not the Golgoroth. This is actually the tentacles we saw from the Dreamlands
Mm-hmm.
when when Alex was spoilers. Alex was when Alex was encountering a certain outer god.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to convey that in the cover that he's actually been there from the
Mm-hmm.
start,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just that we did notice him because he's that good.
Well, it's hard to be a trickster god without, being there first.
Spoilers.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
Right.
anyway, if you see the background,
Mm-hmm.
it's very reminiscent of the Dreamlands,
Mm-hmm.
the stars and the color of it,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the moon, which we
Mm-hmm.
spent some time.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? Looking at this cover, it's pretty detailed in a way
Mm-hmm.
that really reflects on what happened in the second season.
Mm-hmm.
And the simplicity of it is also necessary because you have to cover a whole season, and it's very difficult to convey in a single image. But I think it worked out well in the end.
I do too, and I got to tell you, I hope I say it enough, but I love your colors. The color scheme. I get a lot of people who talk about it, and they talk about the colors, and they talk about the color scheme for Miskatonic High being unique. That it's very sort of bright, colorful, and it's these pinks and these blues, and they're cool colors. It's and we have like the greens here and some of the other colors, and they're very cool colors, but they're also very bright colors, which is a nice trick that you pull off. And it's like the moon. It's a very bright moon, and it's got its own glow to it, but it still feels very cool to it. So can you talk about color and picking color and then working with color?
Sure. Well, the thing about Miskatonic High is that you're not supposed to, when you're reading Lovecraft, you don't really think about high school kids and bright
True. Yeah.
colors,
Mm-hmm.
But since we have these kids,
Mm-hmm.
you really have to put that in somehow.
Mm-hmm.
but it has to be muted in a way. It can't be Archie all the way.
Right.
That's going to break the illusion of the dread. And even though we tend to mix some lively comedic scenes in the comic, we're very serious when it comes to the horror. I mean, we have decapitations, blood, and some really horrible things that happens to some characters.
Yeah.
So that also has to reflect with the colors. And for the monsters, I tend to use purples, blues, greens to really evoke that. For the characters, I think the uniforms was inspired by Harry Potter in a way. I wanted it to be dark because Miskatonic.
Right. Yeah.
As for the colors, this is more of an experimentation. If you notice, from issues 1 to 5, the color scheme was very different. I think I came up with this technique with issue number 6. It has something to do with the way I render the shadows. That's where the bluish hue comes from. And then I tend to balance that with the brighter yellow, which is the highlights. And that contrast is what defines the color scheme of the series. And in a way, it still connects with Miskatonic High. The Miskatonic and the High is the darks and the brights, the highlights, the shadows.
Which is really what our comic is. It's kind of it's this dark, but it's also the bright moments of comedy and caring about the other characters. And I think you're exactly right, and I think it works really well. And I think it's a unique look for our book that really highlights that. Yeah.
So it's that mainly it's those two, and then I put a few more filters in there to harmonize the color so that one if I render the reds, for example, on their badges without that filter, it will be really bright. Actually, if I remove all the filters, this thing will be saturated.
Right. Oh man. Right. So okay. But yeah, I mean, I like this. I can't remember. Do you remember, did we finish season 2 before you had drawn this, or did you draw this before? I can't remember at what point. Normally what we do is
I might have finished season 2 when I worked on this.
Right. And then, okay, so we do a soft cover, trade paperback, and then we do the hardcover. And the hardcover tends to be more of an homage to things that we've liked, but also that work thematically with the comic. And so the first one, with the idea of it being a breakfast club from hell, or in hell, we did the Breakfast Club homage for the first hardcover. And then for the second one, you said that you had this idea of going with an homage to the Goonies cover, and that's all you needed to tell me was the Goonies, and I was on board. And then came back with this, and I loved it immediately, but B, I'm so glad that you said it in the dream worlds, because it feels like such an important part of season 2. It's almost like a turning point for the season, where it's like you start to see that there are a lot bigger things that they're going to be dealing with.
You see the real stakes of the story.
Right. Exactly. And so I'm so glad that you set this here, and it such a unique look that for our comic is whenever we see this pit, I immediately know, okay, we're in the dreamlands. And so when you drew it, it's like, that is perfect. And so why don't you talk about where that inspiration came from, how you put it together, all of that.
Sure. Usually when I do a cover, it takes me a long time to think of a concept. That's
Mhm.
why I usually work on the cover last.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean like I'm not working on it.
Mhm.
Uh, Usually every day I think about it actually.
Mhm.
And before the end of season 2, I was already thinking, eventually going to make a variant cover for the for the hardback.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, we already did the Breakfast Club. I
Mhm.
was thinking, should we do another Breakfast Club, only different poster? And I was
Mhm.
looking through all of them, and none of them really appealed.
Right.
And I was thinking, what other iconic movie came out in the 80s?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I'm old, so sorry about that.
Well, I'm old too. That's why I get all the references.
Yeah, but that's when the great stuff were.
Mhm.
Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, I was thinking Goonies maybe, and I
Mhm.
wasn't sure if you'd be on board with that because it's very different from the Breakfast Club,
Right.
but at the same time, it had that kinetic energy
Mhm.
of youth,
Mhm.
also the mystery.
Mhm.
I still like that movie
I
until
do
this.
too.
I think it's really fun.
Mhm.
So I was looking through the posters,
Mhm.
and I was thinking, wow, there's a lot of them actually.
Yeah, there are.
There's some for the VHS, for the
Yeah.
Betamax, for other countries. I was
Betamax.
thinking, ah, I was really having a hard time to pick one. I
Mhm.
was really close to choosing another concept, and
Mhm.
then I saw this one,
Mhm.
and I thought, wow, this is a powerful image.
Mhm.
Just them hanging, and then I could imagine what could be beneath them.
Mhm.
And I thought, this has potential.
Mhm.
So when you asked me about it, I immediately referred to that poster. Although
Mhm.
I still had no idea how the basic layout would have been.
Mhm.
I knew that that was the poster that I wanted, and luckily you also liked the concept.
Mhm.
So I said, yeah, all right, let's do this. And crap, this is gonna be hard. So I started laying it out. I said, is this really going to work? And
Mhm.
then I said, most of the girls will be wearing skirts. So,
I
so
like
I
how in
said,
your head it's, you're really thinking about this.
yeah. So I said, you know what? I should put them in their civilian clothes. We
Mhm.
haven't done that.
Right.
Not even for the regular, I know, for the regular covers.
Mhm.
So I said, this is a good opportunity. And I think that really reflected with how I approached the cover because immediately I started thinking about the Dreamlands
Mhm.
because most of them were wearing their civilian clothes.
Mhm.
And then I said, you know what? That's perfect. I
Mhm.
could have the God that cannot be named under
Mhm.
them. And
Mhm.
then that's the reason why they're hanging for their dear lives.
Mhm.
It's perfect.
It
So I
really is.
started laying it out and
Mhm.
then said, whoa, I think this could be really good.
Mhm.
And luckily, I think it turned out well.
I think it turned out better than well. I'm not kidding. I love that cover.
Mhm.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the Goonies because the Goonies are another group of kids who are sort of mismatched. It's these two age groups of, the boys who are younger, but then
Mhm.
the older brother and the two girls, and they don't fit together at the beginning of the story, and they sort of work out how they fit together by the end. And that's kind of what our series is, similar to the Breakfast Club. It's a bunch of kids who shouldn't fit together and somehow do by the end. but
Mhm.
also, our story isn't an adventure story. It's they go on these adventures, they deal with these monsters, they run away from the monsters, they escape, or what they conquer or whatever. So I think the Goonies reference worked really well. I like that, but then I also like the idea of them hanging on for dear life, because
Yep.
that's sort of, to me, the two ideas of what makes the comic work, is that the kids are hanging on for dear life from the monsters, but they're also trying to hang on for dear life from what high school is doing to them.
Mhm.
With that it's trying to break them down, and they're trying to survive. And so, I like that they're hanging there, and I love the dreamlands beneath. And again, I like the idea that they're in their civilian clothes, because a lot of the stories in this season involve them sort of outside of school. They went to Innsmouth, or they're dealing with the inn for Thanksgiving break. They're in the dreamlands, or they're going back in time, or all these different things where they're not really in school. And so, the civilian clothes really worked for that. So yeah, I love that one. We did it as our poster. I did a Goonies version of our logo for it, and I actually have them upstairs. I can't wait to send them out to backers. I think they're gonna love them.
I really like that one.
Yeah, I do too. It just, from concept to execution, it's a wonderful piece of art. And I absolutely love it, and everyone I've shown it to has liked it. So well done on that one.
Yeah, well, talking about the civilian clothes and
Hmm.
the season and about season two, that's the thing I like about season two is that we explore the bigger
Right.
world, not just Miskatonic, but the other towns
Hmm.
beside it
Hmm.
and the greater world outside of it, and how it all connects to Miskatonic itself,
Hmm.
to the school, and
Hmm.
to the kids.
Right.
So we were able to learn about the history more, and I think the cover really evokes that, and
Right.
that things are getting serious now.
Right. And that's a lot of what we did in season two. Was we started to get things started to get more serious.
Yep.
I we had this conversation at the end of season one, which was one of the questions on everybody's mind, is why are these weird things happening to these kids?
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that we talked about going forward in season two. Was we have to explain why these weird things are happening to these kids, and is it these kids in particular, or is there something bigger there? And the idea really was to see the bigger world, and how they fit into it. And so that's what we did. We took them down to Innsmouth, and we saw this terrible place that's overrun by um you know things.
Yep.
um and
Spoilers.
then we saw the Ghost Noir, where we realized that Anton is part of a bigger world of spirits than we knew about up to that point. And
Yep.
then we did the Dreamlands, and we saw that it's not just the world, but even the whole universe is it's so beyond, and how they fit into it. And then
Yep.
we took them back in time, and we saw that even back in time, it's part of this bigger weird world than we possibly ever knew about.
Yep.
you know um
Precisely.
so that really was the idea for season two. I think it worked really well. I really enjoy it. I love a lot of the stories in it, just both as standalone, but also showing that movement forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't
Thinking
know
back,
what.
yeah, yeah. If you think about it,
Mhm.
I think it really connects well and it really establishes the whole world
Mhm.
better
Mhm.
because the readers will have understood what the history is about and why this is going on, that there are darker things going on around the world and not just in that particular school.
Right.
And who knows, maybe it's just not the kids, maybe it's happening with other people as well, and we don't know about it. But thanks to guys like Ricky, we might be able to get a glimpse of that in the future.
Right. Absolutely. And we've already talked about some ideas about how to do some Ricky stories in the future. So
and maybe there are strange things that's going on around not just this world, but in other worlds as well.
We say this as we've already done 3 other issues that people haven't seen yet. So yeah, so there's a lot of fun things to come. I can't believe it because we've been working on season 2 for so long. We did 7 issues. We did
the
crossover in between here. We did some other things as well in between here. It's with the Kickstarters always take a little while because it's a month of doing the Kickstarter and then another month of fulfillment, and usually a little bit more. So I mean, it really has. It's been like a year and a half, 2 years since we started putting this out there for readers.
Yeah. I think it's more. I think we started around 2017.
Right, with the first season, and yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years now.
Almost.
Yeah.
And we're just beginning with the 3rd season, and I think things are going to get really interesting.
I do too. I was thinking about this today. It's like I can't wait to start showing them issue 14 because people have been asking for that for a long time, to see more of that, and so I can't wait for them to get it because it's a fabulous one. I can't wait to get there. But first, I gotta get all these books shipped to them.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of fun things to come. I think I'm having a ball with this. I hope you're having a ball making this come.
Definitely, man.
Because
also for the readers, I really appreciate your comments. Although I don't usually comment back because I'm chained to my table drawing.
I unchain you to go to the bathroom, but man, you shouldn't ask for more than that.
I have a bottle here somewhere. Anyway, I really appreciate the readers. They really get me motivated.
Right.
I love the way they've reacted to the series, and you know what? The suggestions and the predictions they have are frighteningly close.
Yeah, right.
And I also love their enthusiasm for the series. I really appreciate that. It really wants me to produce more stories for them. And believe me when I say, Mike has some really sick ideas about upcoming issues.
Right.
Stay tuned.
I might have sick ideas, but you're egging me on the whole time.
That's the secret.
It is
supposed to exist. I'm chained to the table.
I'm not kidding. I have been heard people who believe that you actually are chained to that table. Yeah, but I try to mention this a lot, and I will mention it as many times as need to be, which is, that in a lot of indie comics, the way it works is the writer hires an artist, gives them the script, and says, draw this, and then presents it, and it's my book. I made this. And one of the things that we talked about from the very beginning was that this was going to be our book. We were both going to be equal partners on it, that we both, going forward. And I think that has helped, but more so, I have been so grateful for all the help that you've given me, writing scripts, plotting it out, character, coming up with ideas. We have a couple of stories coming up that you just said, here's the whole concept for the story. I would you mind if I pitched a couple of concepts? And I was like, absolutely. And some of them were so good that we're doing at least 2 of them in season 3. So I've been so grateful that your help on my end of it, because it makes my job easier, and it makes it a lot more fun knowing that you're right there with me.
Hey, no problem. I mean, you're right about the collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the first time we had this commentary,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's amazing to think that people from across the globe
Mm-hmm.
can work on a single vision
Mm-hmm.
and actually put it out there for the rest of the world to read it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, my mind is still blown away by the fact that we have readers in Finland.
Mm-hmm.
We have readers in Japan.
Mm-hmm. All over the world.
That's amazing, man. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Right. And I think it really speaks to the work that we do, not just on all of the issues, but even before we did that first issue, where we really nailed out the concept of what it was going to be. And it's not that there aren't other people doing horror comedies, and because they certainly aren't. We're not the first person to do that. But the idea of Lovecraft with high school comedy, and high school drama was something that people latch onto. And
Mhm.
it makes them smile when they think about it, which we've always talked about is what we want to do with comics. Is we want to make comics that people enjoy, that
Yep.
we don't need to overburden them with anything else, or topical stuff or political stuff or any of this
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
We really just want
Yeah.
to make stories that they're going to enjoy. And
Fun.
I think they do.
And like I said before, it's not supposed to work. I mean, Lovecraft in high
Yeah.
school, it's not supposed to work.
Right.
Breakfast Club is not supposed to be horror, although it is.
But it
Believe
is.
me, it is.
It is. Yeah.
And I mean, I understand people who loves Lovecraft wants the lore to be respected, and I'm one of you guys. So
Mm-hmm.
I assure you, the lore is intact. It's just that we 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 have to make some stuff that's suitable for this world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for people who read Miskatonic High, they understand that it's not a direct retelling of Lovecraft,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just meant to be fun, but
Mm-hmm.
also it's the horror is still there. Believe
Right.
me, the horror is still there.
Right. And I think we try to be respectful of the source, the source material that we do touch on. When we take elements from that, we're not making fun of those elements. We're just bringing them into a world where jokes exist, where high school exists, where all these things
Mhm.
exist. And I think our audience enjoys that, like seeing how it plays on the original but brings it into this new thing.
Mhm.
If people want adaptations of Lovecraft, there are a
There's
lot
a
of them
lot
out
of
there.
them out there, and really good ones.
Right. And I certainly I tend to buy a lot of them. I like a lot of them, but the
Mhm.
ones that I really, really respond to are the ones that take Lovecraft in a new direction. And that was my hope when we started doing this, was that we weren't going to just be the same old that people
Mhm.
can get anyplace else, that we're trying to bring them something new, some new element, some new light on it that hopefully they can enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so that is season 2. We'll have to get together once we start talking about season 3, because I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about with issue 14, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no snow. Um,
No snow.
no snow. So we will do that soon. Just want to say thanks again for doing this. You know, this has kind of become one of our stretch goals for the Kickstarters, and you know, my son was looking at the numbers on our YouTube and was impressed by the number of people who were watching. So I
Really?
I
How
think
many
people.
are there?
Oh, I have no idea. Are you kidding? I'd have to go wake him up and bring him down and show me how to find it.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Kids and YouTube, man.
kids
My
and
kid
YouTube.
doesn't watch TV anymore.
Nope, it's all YouTube.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. YouTube and Disney Plus. That's it.
Oh,
Yep.
that's
All
great.
right. All right. Well,
So
thank you so
anything
much, Ryan.
else? Anything else, man?
Nothing that I can think of. Can you think of anything else?
Mm, I guess that's it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Sure.
All
No
right.
problem. See
All
ya.
right. Have a good day.